Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner, and today's episode is Paris-Roubaix, a little preview and some important tactics that will be much needed when we're talking about the Cobble Classic for tomorrow's race, for the women and for the men's. The main thing when you get into any size team, doesn't matter if it's a small team like Webcourt here or Saturn, the biggest U.S. domestic team, or Sonia Duval, one of the small European teams, or Radio Shack, that was one of the bigger teams in Europe. No matter the size of the team, you always have to have good communication and you always have to have a captain on the team. The captain doesn't necessarily have to be the leader, but he has to be good enough to get to the finish of the race or someplace really, really near it so that he can fix any tactical mistakes throughout the day that the team is doing. Now, a lot of times, we always hear from commentators during the race. They're talking about the DS is giving tactics. The DS is running the show. And the DS back there in the car, he is the main captain. But I'm here to tell you, the rider up front, the captain of the team that's up front, will see the tactical mistakes and be able to fix it way before the information gets relayed back there to the DS driving the car. And if you wait for the DS at times, that race is already blown up and it can't be fixed. So the captain rider needs to make calls. Now I'm going to bring back the Brabantse Pijl, the women's race, because this was a great example of how important the captain is on the team. And when we're watching the Brabantse Pijl with 1 lap to go, we're going to see 2 riders off the front. It's Paulina Royakkers from Canyon SRAM and then Demi Vollering from SD Works. Now these 2 riders got off with about 28 kilometers to go in the race. And shortly after that, with about 23 kilometers to go, it's the DSM rider back there, the French rider Labousse, who's trying to chase. She's been stuck at about 12 to 15 seconds throughout the 23 kilometers all the way to this last lap to go when we're at about 20 to 18 kilometers to go. Now, up front, the 2 riders, the 2 breakaway riders up there, Demi Vollering starts to feel with about 13 kilometers to go. Just before then, she starts to feel that Royakkers is not coming through and doing even pulls. At this point in time, we come down a slight descent. There's a hard left turn, and we're going to see Demi Vollering throw in a big acceleration here to try to go solo and win here at the Brabantse Pijl. Now, this is when you need a captain to take charge at this moment in time in the race, and you need the DS before the bike race started, possibly even way back in January, to explain to the riders the importance of not getting dropped out of the front group until the absolute last moment. So you can't make mistakes up there when you're with a champion rider like Demi Vollering, who's won Liège-Bastogne-Liège and has a host of wins on her resume. Now, when we look at Royakkers, she does the intelligent thing right after the first acceleration from Demi Vollering. She sits on the wheel. We're going to see Demi Vollering look back multiple times, hoping that Royakkers will come through and take a pull up front. Now, when I'm watching from the couch, Royakkers is doing everything perfect at this moment. She's going to come up next to the side, but then she's not going to take a pull, and she's going to slot right back on the wheel of Demi Vollering. That was perfect. Now we're going to see her get on the radio. At this point in time, I'm assuming she's on the radio saying, hey, I'm hurting. I need some help up here. I'm about ready to get dropped. Or she's asking for advice from the DS and waiting to hear back from the DS. Because right after that, about 500 meters later, we're going to see Royakkers take a strong pull on the front with Demi Vollering, and this was a catastrophic mistake right here, and this is what you cannot have happen when you go into these big semi-classics and, of course, the one-day monuments like Paris-Roubaix coming up tomorrow. Now, when Royakkers comes through and takes a pull, she'll pull straight into the very next climb, the Mosca Strat, with 10 kilometers to go. And now Demi Vollering knows exactly what she has to do. She has to drop Royakkers right here at this moment on this climb. And she does. She accelerates hard on the pedals, and there's an instant gap there to the Canyon SRAM rider, Royakkers. Now, behind, Royakkers has some options. The gap is opening up quickly there to Demi Vollering, so the option to stay with Demi Vollering is no longer there. The option to sit on Demi Vollering before this climb started was there, but she passed up on that option and started to pull with her. Now she's getting dropped. There's still options left. We have 10 kilometers to go. The gap is still small, and there's multiple riders behind that's chasing still. Directly behind Royakkers is going to be the DSM rider Labousse. Now, Royakkers at this option, she can sit up, she can get Labousse on her wheel, and the two can try to chase. That's a great option. But Royacker still decides to go solo over the top of the Muskrat and continues to lose time up there to Demi Vollering. Now, with 8 kilometers to go, they'll start the next climb, the Holstrad. When they start the Holstrad, again, more options set up still at this moment if Canyon SRAM want an option of winning here at the Brabantse Pijl with Demi Vollering going solo. That gap's now about 20 seconds, 23 seconds up to Demi Vollering. And when we start going up the Holstrad there's going to be 3 girls back there chasing. And in that group of 3 is chasing is another DSM riders, Lippers, and then it's Canyon SRAM, Nui Adoma. Now, Nui Adoma, she's a fabulous rider. She doesn't win a whole lot, but she has won Amstel Gold. That's on her resume. And she is always in the front groups fighting. She's much like I was. She can climb, but she doesn't have a lot of speed to be able to finish out wins and big victories at races, but she's still in the front group. So with that option, again, when you're looking at Royackers at the front, we know the option of closing the gap up there to Demi Vollering no longer exists. So now what are our other options? Should I stay at the front and fight for second place? Or should I, at this moment, wait for my teammate who's actually pulling the group back there of 3 riders up to Le Boost? At that moment, I'm thinking as I'm sitting on the couch, okay, Royackers, best choice right now. You've made a bad decision by working with Demi Vollering. You got dropped. You didn't wait for Le Boost. Now you're on the Holstrad. If you go to the top of the Holstrad and wait right there and slow down for your teammate back there, Nui Adoma, now you can start pulling, and you only have about 7.5 kilometers to the finish, but the gap at this point in time is still around 30 seconds. So probably not doable, but still a chance. I'm saying there's a chance to bring back Demi Vollering if she waits at the top of the climb. Instead, Royackers continues on the pedal as she's trying to do damage control to bring back Demi Vollering, but there is no shot for that. Now, when we get under 6 kilometers to go, we're going to see it's going to be Royackers that looks back. She can see the group, so if there was a problem with the radio, now certainly she can see the group back there that has her teammate, Nui Adama, there in the group, locked in with the 2 DSM riders and 1 SD Works rider, Marlene Ruser. Now with that group, if she sits up still when she looks back with 6 kilometers to go, there's still a chance of doing something before the finish of today's stage. Remember, everything in cycling is about marginal gains, right? Sky invented the word marginal gains. It's all about marginal gains. If the tactics are done right, Demi Vollering, by sitting on at 13 kilometers to go, probably would have killed that move back there. And now, of course, Canyon SRAM would have had a shot at winning here at the Brabantse Pijl. Now, on top of all those mistakes by Royackers, when we go into 3.5 kilometers to go, Royackers is almost there getting caught by the DSM rider with Lippert as their team leader and with Le Boost pulling on the front. Instead, even with 3.5 kilometers to go, Royackers is still pulling on the front as hard as she can, trying to get second or possibly hoping she can still bring back Demi Vollering, which has no chance at this moment. Now, the next big mistake, again by the Canyon SRAM rider Royackers, when she's getting caught. At this moment, she should have already rested up at about 4 kilometers to go when the group was that close and been ready to jump straight on the front and pull as hard as she can into the last and final S-bend climb with 1.5 kilometers to go. Instead, Royackers doesn't even get on the front. She slots all the way back to Nui Adama and has a little powwow back there with her team leader. At this point in time, with 3.5 kilometers to go, that's now just turned into almost 3, and you're still back there chatting with your leader back there while you got a group chasing behind that's close by, and you have the race lead going up for the win today on the Brabantse Pijl. There shouldn't be any powwow needed right here for Canyon SRAM. It should have automatically been Royackers on the front pulling as hard as she can with Le Boost and then going into the last climb. Now, why I bring this up? Because marginal gains are so big. So important that all those tactical mistakes were forgotten there by Canyon SRAM, by the DS driving the car, by, of course, Nui Adama, who was in that group back there chasing her teammate that could have got on the radio and said, hey, Royackers, sit up. By Royackers herself that looked back multiple times and saw that there were other options rather than going solo in this race. And then, with 1.5 kilometers to go, we're going to see Demi Vollering, and she's going to toss her water ball. This is called marginal gains, guys. Now, the tactics back there from Canyon SRAM, Those aren't marginal gains. Those are massive mistakes. They could have been marginal gains if the tactics were employed right at 13 kilometers to go. If the DS had told his rider, Roy Akers, to sit on. If Nui Adami, who was in that second group, pulling as hard as she could up the Holstrad, had radioed up to Roy Akers to sit up and wait. If Roy Akers, when she looked back and saw her teammate there, had sat up and waited for her teammate, then Canyon SRAM would still have an option to win today here on the S-Bins up to the final of the Brabantse Pijl. Because when we're going up the final S-Bins, it's Nui Adami back there who throws in a massive attack with about 8 kilometers to go. Liana Lippert hops on her wheel, and she's fast and has some speed. But Nui Adoma is so strong that with about 300 meters to go, she sits down, looks back, sees the gap there to the DSM rider, jumps back on her pedals, and at this point in time, her legs are absolutely noodles. But she knows that she already has the gap on the DSM rider, and she'll win the sprint back there for second. Now, I'm not saying that she could have dropped Demi Vollering if the group had all come together up this S-Bins, but clearly we all know Nui Adami is the better of the two climbers, and anything is possible if you can bring back Demi Vollering before the final climb starts. So Canyon SRAM's tactics were catastrophically wrong with 13 kilometers to go. And when we get into Paris-Roubaix, when we get into such a difficult, complicated, muddy, visually dusty, whatever it's going to be on tomorrow's women's race, you got to call the tactics right away. There has to be a captain. They have to be spot on. And at points in times, you have to let things breathe a little bit and then call riders out of the break, like Wout van Aert and Jumbo-Visma should have done last year when he had mechanical problems and teammates still up the road. So keep that in mind when you're watching here at Paris-Roubaix, the women's edition, and of course the men's edition on Sunday. These mistakes should have never appeared when you're talking about riders up the road not waiting for their team leaders behind. Now, I want to talk about one other thing before tomorrow's women's race start and, of course, the men's race on Sunday. We've all seen the new latest and biggest gadgets coming out here for Paris-Roubaix. DSM are going to use the tire management system Scope Atmos. Now, this is going to inflate their tires and deflate their tires for the cobblestone sections, and then, of course, make the tires more firm and harder when they get back out on the pavement. Now, do I like it or do I not like it? At this point in time, it's still hard to tell because we haven't actually seen it being used yet. So I need to know if it's safe, is it reliable? Then, what's most important, how much of an advantage is this tire management system? Because if riders are going to flat and then they switch back to a normal tire and they can't adjust their pressure, now all of a sudden you got guys at different speed levels here on the cobblestones. Some are getting traction, some can't get traction. So is that going to cause crashes back there? We had the same debate when it came towards disc brakes. If disc brakes slow down quicker and the non-disc brakes, the rim brakes back there don't, are the riders from the back going to hit the riders in front with the disc brakes? The same can be said with the tire management system here from Scope Atmos. If the front rider has great traction, he gets on the brakes, it's slippery, muddy, it's super dusty, he touches his brakes, the tires grab automatically because the inflation pressure is super low, but the guy in back is skidding across the cobblestones and runs into the back of the rider. This is absolutely exactly the same thing as disc brakes when you're comparing the two, because it's all traction and it's all slows the bike or makes the bike handle different. Whenever the peloton is mixed, when you have guys who can't slow down as fast and guys who can slow down super fast, it's going to cause accidents. So I need to see how well this tire management system works before I give you my real opinion. But at this point in time, I don't like it. There's always going to be an advantage to a different bike or different wheels. Are you running carbon? Are you running aluminums? Are you going to run a 28C tire? Are you going to run a 25? But the differences are minor, so the peloton can adjust to that. If this tire management system really works well, it's going to be a problem if the guys on front hit the brakes and they can stop, or the guys on front can go through the corners fast, and now you get a rider back there who's slipping through the corner because he doesn't have traction and he's crashing, and then the rider right behind him has a tire management system, but guess what? He can't do anything about it because the guy in front of him crashes. Now we got 50 guys going down on the cobblestones here at Paris-Roubaix. So at this moment, I'm going to say I don't like it. It could be too extreme of a difference between the riders with it and the riders without it. Now, certainly when it comes to the amateur ranks, it shouldn't be allowed. It's too expensive, and it just makes the cost of racing your bike at the amateur level too expensive for parents and for young kids. At home in my garage, I'd love to try it. Bring it on, put one in the mail today, send it over to my house. I would love to try it out. So I'm 100% for it for myself. I'm not for it for the amateur ranks, and I'm probably against it at the pro ranks if it really is a big advantage, because it's just too much of a difference between bikes in the peloton, and it's going to cause crashes back there just like disc brakes were. Now, I hope you guys are getting ready for Paris-Roubaix, the women's race. It was super exciting last year with, of course, Trek Segafredo winning back there. And then the men's race, another wet and miserable day. Tomorrow, though, and of course on Sunday, it looks like it's going to be dry. So we should have a fast, hard, and a lot of tactics being played at Paris-Roubaix to figure out who wins. My favorite for the women's race is going to be Marianne Vos, Chantal Black. She should be super strong for SD Works. And I'm going to go Trek Segafredo, Elisa Longo Borghini for my third pick on the podium here at the women's Paris-Roubaix. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition.